good day everyone. Our topic for today is Chapter 6, Finding and Review of Related Literature. Here is our objective. Okay? Upon the completion of the chapter or the module, the students demonstrate understanding of loads of information, evaluating resources, primary and secondary data, and doing a literature review. The most important reason of being for doing research is to produce new knowledge and understanding, and to disseminate it to make it available to everyone. When planning a research project, it is essential to know what the current state of knowledge is in your chosen subject, as it is obviously a waste of time to spend months producing knowledge that is already freely available. Therefore, one of the first steps in planning a research project is to do a literature review. That is, to troll through all the available information sources in order to track down the latest knowledge and to assess it for relevance, quality, controversy, and gaps. The last two will indicate where additional research is required to try to resolve a controversy or to fill a gap. This chapter explains where to find the necessary information and how to analyze it and present it so that you can devise a solid basis for your research project. Load of information. We are in an age of radical information expansion. So whatever your subject, there can be no excuse that you are faced with a lack of information. The problem lies in where to find relevant information of the right quality. Any troll through the internet will demonstrate what a lot of rubbish there is on every subject under the sun. Even a visit to the library or a good bookshop can be a daunting experience. And luckily, you can easily learn how to use sophisticated methods of trolling for the information you need. No need to spend hours in dusty archives, no need to buy lots of expensive books, but there is a need to get skilled in search and find techniques and methods of appraisal. Where you look will depend on the subject you have chosen. Some sources cover most subjects, and others are specialized in a narrow range and will hence provide more detail. Here is a list of places you can search. Number one, of course, is the libraries. Your university or college library, of course, this should be your first choice. Here you will find a huge amount of information and also about all of the other information sources. There are also specialist libraries such as subject libraries in university, college, or university departments, professional libraries in professional institution, technical libraries in technical research establishment. Local libraries sometimes have special collections of local interest. Try to get the latest publications unless you have special reasons not to. So example, if your proposal is about historical studies, the information is fast-moving subjects such as management, business, science, and our field, technology, will become rapidly obsolete. But in the humanities, older publication can have lasting value. It is no longer sufficient just to visit the shelves to see what is there. Even if you have consulted the online catalog first. Again, since we are in pandemic, you just try to open an online catalog first. There will be a wide range of electronic sources and search facilities provided backup by training sessions and leaflets in the use of these. Being adept of making searches will save you lots of time and frustration, as well as ensuring that you get hold of all the latest information you need. And here are some of the facilities you should investigate. Number 1, library catalog. Most libraries now have an electronic catalog access through their computer terminals, often accessible online from elsewhere to via and Entra and or internet. Number 2, journals and newspapers. They are often cataloged and stored separately to the books and may be available online. As they appear regularly, they tend to be very up-to-date. Number 3, electronic databases. These are computer-based list of publication on CD-ROM or the compact disc read-only memory or on the universities or college intranet or the intranet. They contain huge number of sources, usually searched by using keywords. Some provide only titles, publication details in abstracts. Others provide the full text. Citation indexes list the publication in which certain books, articles have been used as a reference. Another, of course, is the librarians. There are often subject librarians who have specialist knowledge and specific subject areas. They will be able to help you explore more elusive sources. Universities and colleges libraries usually run free training sessions on all aspects of searching for information. How about the information services? Actually, some government agencies or departments such as Standard Institute, records offices, statistical offices provide information for a public. Pressure groups and voluntary organizations often produce publication about their work. Research establishments, professional and trade organizations also release details about latest research. In our case here in our country, of course, we have National Library. Some town have their own libraries or museums, so you could visit their libraries. Okay, museum and galleries or for national and local. Apart from the exhibit, museum and galleries usually produce a range of printed and electronic information. They may also have many artifacts that are in store and only accessible by arrangement. Private collections of historical records and artifacts might be found. People. There are experts in every field. Some will be willing to advise you. Try the members of your own college or university staff at first, many of whom will be involved in research. Your library will contain guides to professionals and experts. In some cases, local knowledge will be needed. Search out the relevant local experts, local historians, social workers, ornithologists, and others. Of course, we have intranets. Your own university or college or organization's intranet. This often provide lecture and presentation notes as well as other specialist information produced by their staff. So example, their school papers or journals, research papers, and professional or professorial lectures. We have internet, of course, the full gamut of World Wide Web, with thousands of pages being added every day in the World Wide Web. It is the biggest single source of information in the world. However, the content is of extremely variable quality, and the biggest challenge when using it is to track down good quality material. You can easily waste hours trawling through rubbish in search of the goodest. Careful use of search terms helps to eliminate the trash. Usually, the more precise your search parameters, the more manageable the search results will be. Not all information on the World Wide Web is for free. Again, not all information on the World Wide Web is for free. Published internet guides can help you to make the best of this resource. Try your library for less devoted to subject areas. Some are specifically aimed at students and list useful search engines, sites, and databases. Any internet guide becomes quickly outdated. Specialized search engines such as Google Scholar will filter out much of the dross by listing academic and technical papers from proven sources. Evaluating web sources. Anyone can add pages to the World Wide Web. So, how can you judge if the information you have found is reliable? Here are 7 different tests you can make to judge the quality of the contents. Number 1, is it accurate? Does it say what sources the data are based on? Compare the data with other sources. If it diverges greatly, is there some explanation for this? Number 2, what authority is based on? Find out who authored the pages and whether they are recognized experts or issued by a reputable organization. Check if other publications are cited or if they provide a bibliography of other articles, reports, or books. You may need to track down at homepage to get to the details. Web addresses that end in AC, meaning academic, are likely to be a university or college addresses and therefore point to some intellectual credibility. No guarantee of quality but nevertheless a useful indicator. Number 3, is it biased? Many pressure groups and commercial organizations use the web to promote their ideas and products and present information in one-sided way. Can you detect a vested interest in the subject on the part of the author? Find out more about the authors. Does the information about animal experiments come from an anti-vivisection league, a cosmetic company, or an independent research institute, or something that they are, for example, they are not in our field in IT, but they are doing an IT project. Okay? Number 4, how detailed is the information? Is the information so general that it is of little use, or so detailed and specialized that it is difficult to understand? Investigate whether it is only fragmentary and misses out important issues in the subject or in your title, and whether the evidence is backed up by relevant data. There may be useful links to further information and other websites or printed publications. Number 5 is it out of date? Pages stay on the web until they are removed. Some have obviously been forgotten and are hopelessly out of date. Try to find a date or when it was updated, perhaps on the View Page Information option on your web browser. Note that some updates might not update all the contents. Check any links provided to see if they work. Number 6, have you cross-checked? Compare the contents with other sources of information such as books, articles, official statistics, and other websites. Does the information tally with or contradict this? If the latter, can you see and why? Number 7, have you tried pre-evaluated or subject gateways? The information on these sites have been vetted by experts in the relevant subjects, so can be relied upon to be a high quality. You just try to look for BUBL link or www.bubl.ac.uk/link/. Doing a literature review. The oft-repeated instruction to do a literature review belies some of the complexities of the task. But why should you do one? The review that forms part of research proposal, paper, thesis, or dissertation is an important introduction to the research project and underpins the argument about why the project is worth doing. It therefore forms a distinctly recognizable section near the beginning and leads on to the more specific and practical description of the research activities. In the dissertation or thesis, usually, one of the first chapter consists of a critical appraisal of the research literature relevant to the research subject under consideration. This is a more extended version of what is required for a proposal. In order to understand the present state of the art, you too need to read what other people have written about research in your subject or title and make some kind of an assessment of where your research will fit in that body of work. You need to establish that what you are proposing has not been done in the same way before. Again, you need to establish that what you are proposing has not been done in the same way before. To do this, you obviously need to find out what has been researched and how within the area that you want to investigate. The how is important because the way previous research has been conducted will provide a useful source of experience in using relevant research methods for collecting and analyzing the data or information. The review can be used to show where you have gained inspiration to develop your ideas, and that does not just have to be only from academic sources. It should also demonstrate that you have a good understanding of the current conceptual frameworks in your title and that you can take a stance in placing your work within this. The literature review tends to reveal a lot about the attitude of the researcher and the seriousness of his or her intentions, as well as the level of organization and clarity of thought achieved. Because doing a literature review means not only tracking down all the relevant information, but also taking a critical position on the ideas contained therein. The latter is an important step in determining the quality of research evidence. The process involves an objective critique and evaluation of the strengths and weaknesses of a document to determine its design, quality, and merits, and its relevance of your research title or topic. You will need to evaluate and consider the relevance of the document to your own thesis question or capstone questions and study objectives. The literature review will need to be carried out in four major directions, not just narrowly confined to your specific subject area. Of course, I have here arranged from the general to the particular. Their relative importance depending on the nature of your subject. In doing a literature review, we need to consider the research theory and philosophy. Why? Because to establish the intellectual context of research related to your subject. We need also to know the story of development in your title or subjects. Why? To trace the background to present thinking. We need also to look for a latest research and development in your subjects. And you're asking again why? Because we want to inform about the current issues being investigated in the latest thinking and practice, to discuss the conflicting arguments, and to detect a gap in knowledge. And of course, the research methods, to explore practical techniques that have been used, particularly those that might be relevant to your project. Here is a checklist of useful points for your review. Compile an overview of the literature to illustrate the interplay of ideas and major steps in the development of your project. Introduce the important issues of your research problem through the analysis of the literature. Explain the general theoretical background to help, of course, the reader understand the attitudes behind the reviewed literature and your own philosophical stance. Make links across discipline boundaries when doing an interdisciplinary review rather than keeping each separate and examine in turn. You may even suggest some new links that need to be investigated. Include some account of how the previous research was done, so that you have a precedent for your own approach to a methodology. How many references should you have? This depends on the subject and extent of the review, as the literature review part of a research proposal has to be very short and compact due to limitation of space. You are unlikely to be able to cite more than, take note, 15 to 20 authors. 5 to 10 might even be sufficient in a narrowly defined field. For a literature review chapter of a dissertation or thesis or research project, 20 to 35 references are more likely. The important thing is to select those that are really significant for your work. Analyzing the text. A distinction must be made between a review of the related literature as a preliminary to a research project and the detailed analysis of each piece of literature. The latter is a quality control exercise that helps you to choose the best and most relevant pieces of information to use in the review. The point of the detailed analysis is not just to find fault with the style of writing or ideas, but to present a critique, an analysis, or an examination of them, to give your own personal and professional appraisal of the content and quality of the content in question. Take note, a description is not enough. Critical appraisal requires lots of in-depth reading and is a skill that has to be learned and practiced, which can initially be quite time-consuming. The main steps can be summarized as follows. Number 1, don't forget to do that. Thoroughly read the original research article and decide if it is relevant to your study. Assess whether the purpose of the research is well defined and that the research methods are made clear. Identify the data collection and analysis methods, the findings and the consciousness, and make an assessment of their clarity. Number 2, reveal the assumption upon which the writings and arguments are based. All writing is rooted in theory and based on values. Sometimes, these are quite clearly stated at the beginning of the text. Sometimes, they are obscured or not mentioned. Some knowledge of the different theoretical positions is required in order to be able to detect them and know what they imply. So example, feminist approach in social science, a Keynesian approach in economics, a modernist approach in architecture, and Freudian approach in psychology. Number 3, trace the logic of the argument to ascertain whether the steps in the argument lead from the evidence to the conclusion. You can do this by first detecting the conclusion indicators, and therefore it follows that, and others. In order to pinpoint the conclusions, the main conclusion should normally appear towards the end of the work, though there may be intermediate conclusions scattered throughout. You can then investigate what evidence is given to support the conclusion and whether the evidence is credible. For example, does it come from reliable sources? And number 4, compare it with other work once again. As there are no absolute values to which you can appeal in order to make assessment and no clear rules about what is right and wrong, make comparisons between texts in order to highlight the different approaches. Level of thoroughness, contradictions, strength of arguments, implication of theoretical stances, and accepted values and types of a conclusion. How about presenting your analysis? How could able to present our analysis? Okay. A review of the literature should provide an introduction to the latest concept and advances in thinking the chosen subject by citing relevant papers and publication and authors to underpin the description. However, a thorough critical appraisal of the papers investigated will require a more systematic approach. You will need to make a summary that briefly covers your critical appraisal and assessment of the quality of each research paper. It is good idea to standardize the form of your appraisals using standard headings, such as, of course, study design and assumptions you need to look into. Methods of data collection, you just also try to look into. Analytical methods, the main findings, and the conclusion. The study trends and limitation. Of course, when it comes to study trends and limitation, you need to look into clarity, logic, and the scope. Using the list of headings, you can produce a table with the summaries of the results of your critical appraisal of each of the studies so that you can scan across the set of papers. This will then provide a clear and simple framework for making a comparative assessment of the papers. There are several very useful tools and checklists available in the books, recommended, of course, in our references, that consists of detailed set of questions in the form of checklists. Some critical appraisal tools are general, while others focus specifically on appraising particular types of research, such as quantitative research, systematic reviews, qualitative research evidence, experimental research, quasi-experimental, and others. I think that's it for today. What you're going to do, of course, is to be more focused, read a lot of review of related literature, studies related to your system or your proposal. And I also advise for you to visit, of course, some available online journals like ACM, IEEE, and some other. Like, for example, again, as I mentioned a while ago, Google Scholar. Of course, we had a lot of available sources online. And okay, this will be our references. It is very important to a review of related literature to write down all your references and bibliography. Don't forget that. It is always important to write it down. Everything that you review or even you include to your capstone project, it must be required, no, to write down their references and or bibliography.